Good evening. Tonight, we leave behind the comfort of soft beds and electric light. Tonight, we step into a world where the night is black as pitch, and the morning greets you with hunger gnawing at your ribs. A place where your worth is measured in how much grain you can pull from stubborn soil before your back gives out, and where one wrong step, one wrong word, might end with your body swinging from the oak tree in the village square. This is medieval Europe. And you, soft hands, clean water, shoes without holes, wouldn't last a day. So, lean back, maybe grab a drink or something to eat. Though I should warn you, what we're about to see might just ruin your appetite. The fires are lit, the roads are muddy, and the smell of the tannery drifts through the streets. Let's begin. The rooster doesn't crow. It's already dead. You hear only the sound of damp wind clawing its way through the crooked timbers of your wattle and daub hut, a thin ribbon of mist snakes across the dirt floor, and your breath escapes in pale clouds. The fire pit in the center of the room is nothing but cold ash. You don't remember the last time you had enough firewood to keep it going through the night. But you do remember the aching in your bones that never leaves. You are in a village so small it doesn't have a name, at least not one that matters beyond the crooked wooden sign at its edge. Your house is no more than a rectangle of mud walls stuffed with straw, its roof sagging under the weight of last night's rain. The smell of wet earth mingles with something sharper, the latrine outside, overflowing after the storm, its contents seeping into the soil where your drinking water comes from. You pretend not to notice. Hunger wakes you before the sun does. You've eaten little more than black bread and thin cabbage soup for weeks. Meat is a festival food, reserved for saints' days or if a neighbor's pig dies of disease. You, of course, have no pig. There's work to be done before daylight. There's always work to be done. The concept of rest exists only in church sermons, spoken by men who've never spent a day stooped in the fields. The Lord's land must be plowed, the hay carted, the ditches cleared. You are a serf, bound to the soil like a worm, legally tied to the same patch of ground for your entire life. You can't leave, not without your Lord's permission. And why would he ever grant it? You are part of the estate's machinery, no more mobile than the oxen, and just as replaceable. As you step outside, the cold bites through the holes in your wool tunic. The path is a soup of mud and manure, churned by hooves and bare feet alike. Villagers shuffle past you, faces pale, shoulders hunched against the mist. One man, old Wulfric, coughs a deep, wet rattle. You note the purple blotches on his neck and avert your eyes. You've heard whispers of sickness in the next town over. The word pestilence hangs unspoken in the damp air. At the edge of the fields, the land stretches out in long, uneven furrows. You take the plow handles, guiding the ox through soil heavy with last night's rain. Your back screams. Before you've made it halfway down the row, there's no choice but to keep going. Your rent isn't paid in coin, but in labor, and the Lord's steward keeps count. Miss your days, and you'll find your family sleeping in the ditch by week's end. By midday, the sun struggles through the fog. Your hands are raw from the plow's rope. You pause only long enough to gnaw at a crust of bread, so hard it could be used as a weapon. Water is drawn from the stream, its surface thick with green scum. You drink it anyway, because thirst is more immediate than fear of dysentery. When you return to the village, there's commotion by the well. Two men drag a thief by the arms, his tunic torn, his eyes wild. The bailiff follows, holding a rope. You recognize the man, Edric, a tenant from the far end of the hamlet. His crime, stealing a chicken. It doesn't matter that the chicken was half. Dead from sickness, theft from the Lord's property is theft all the same. The bailiff doesn't speak as he loops the rope around Adric's neck. The oak tree at the edge of the square is the village's only gallows, and it's seen enough use to wear a permanent dark groove in its branch. Children watch from the sidelines, their faces blank. Death is not a spectacle here, it's part of the week. The hanging is quick, the drop short. His feet twitch in the air before going still. The crowd disperses without a word. You think of the chicken, probably eaten by the steward's family by now. That night, the wind rises, moaning against the shutters. Your belly aches with emptiness, but you're too tired to feel hunger. You curl on your straw pallet, your skin itching from fleas. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howls. Your thoughts drift to the rumors you've heard, of lands beyond the forest, of cities where streets are paved in stone, of markets where spices and fabrics from far-off lands can be bought. But even in your dreams, you know you'll never see them. That night, the wind rises, moaning against the shutters. Your belly aches with emptiness, but you're too tired to feel hunger. You curl on your straw pallet, your skin itching from fleas. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howls. Your thoughts drift to the rumors you've heard, of lands beyond the forest, of cities where streets are paved in stone, of markets where spices and fabrics from far off lands can be bought. But even in your dreams, you know you'll never see them. When morning comes, it's not the sun that wakes you, it's the cold. The fire in the hearth has long since died, and the air in the hut clings to you like icy fingers. The smell is the same as always: damp earth, smoke, and the faint rot of the thatch above your head. You pull yourself upright, bones aching, and listen. There is no bird song this morning, only the distant creak of the village well and the muffled cough of a neighbor. You rise slowly, the fleas follow. Your feet find the frozen dirt floor, and you shuffle toward the door. The latch is stiff with frost. Outside, the sky is a flat sheet of pale grey, and frost has stiffened the ruts of the main path into jagged ridges. Every breath comes out in a white plume, every step crunches. Your stomach twists, but you know there is no bread left from yesterday. Breakfast, if it comes at all, will come after the morning's work, and the work waits. At the edge of the village, the fields lie under a crust of frost, the stubble of last year's harvest poking through like the ribs of some buried beast. Winter is the long hunger, the time when work never ends, yet nothing grows. You join the others heading toward the woods, baskets slung over their backs, crude axes and knives in hand. Today's goal: gather firewood and whatever scraps of food the forest might yield. The trees are skeletal, their black branches clawing at the sky. You trudge through brittle undergrowth, scanning for mushrooms, nuts, anything edible. But the forest in winter is stingy. A crow caws overhead, following you from branch to branch, as if mocking your search. You find nothing but a few wizened berries, frozen hard as stones. You pocket them anyway. The air smells of smoke. Someone is burning damp wood nearby. It clings to the throat, makes your eyes water. As you wander deeper, you pass the rotting trunk of a fallen oak, its insides crawling with pale grubs. You hesitate, then crack the wood open with your knife. The grubs writhe. Disgust twists your face, but you know you'll eat them later. By midday, your basket holds little more than kindling and those few berries. Your fingers are numb, your nails split and blackened from cold. and dirt. Hunger is a steady ache now. Your mind drifts to the manor, your lord's great hall, with its stone walls and roaring fire, the smell of roasting meat drifting out the doors. But those smells are not for you. You are a serf, bound to this land, bound to this life. The Lord's food is his own, and if you were caught stealing so much as a crust, you know what they do. The sun begins to sink before you even notice it's risen. Winter days are short here. You and the others return to the village in a slow, trudging line, each person hunched beneath the weight of wood or disappointment. The smoke from the hearths hangs low, trapped under the cold sky. You trade a few sticks of firewood for a hunk of black bread. Hard as wood, sour with the taste of rye and years of poverty. You chew slowly, not for pleasure, but to make it last. Somewhere in the square, a thin dog noses through the snow, searching for scraps. It stops, watching you with hollow eyes, its ribs showing under its patchy fur. You turn away. You can't feed yourself? How could you feed it? That evening, the village gathers in the single-room alehouse. The air inside is heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies, spilled oil, and damp wool. Smoke curls lazily toward the rafters. Here, for a moment, the cold is forgotten. Someone plucks a lute, badly, and an old man tells the story of a saint who once walked these very woods. The tale twists into one about a demon, as such stories often do. And for a moment the children huddle closer to their mothers. You sit by the wall, cradling a cup of watered-down ale. It is weak, sour, but warm. Outside, the wind howls like the wolf from last night. The talk shifts from saints and demons to news of war, of armies moving across the distant plains, of castles burning, of men pressed into service and never returning. You try not to listen, but the words stick. War feels far away, but in truth, it's always closer than you think. When the ale runs out and the fire burns low, the crowd drifts home. You walk through the dark, the path lit only by the pale wash of the moon. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. Your breath ghosts in the air. Inside your hut, you collapse onto the pallet. The straw crunches under you, dust rising into the cold air. You pull the thin blanket over yourself and stare at the rafters, tracing the dark lines where the smoke has stained the wood. You think of the rumors again, of stone streets, of warm bread, of places where winter does not bite so deep. But as your eyelids grow heavy, the truth settles on you like the coldie. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. The wind rises again, rattling the shutters. Somewhere in the forest, something moves. Too heavy for a fox, too quiet for a man. You listen until your heartbeat slows, until the sound fades into the night, and then you sleep. But in medieval Europe, sleep is no guarantee of safety. The night is not just for rest. It is for thieves, for murderers, for creatures you cannot name. The village dogs bark once, then fall silent. Somewhere in the dark spaces between homes, footsteps crunch softly on the frost. You are unaware of them now, lost in dreams of warmth and bread. But come morning, you may hear whispers of something missing or someone. For now, the darkness holds its secrets. The fire in the Lord's hall still burns, the wind still prowls the edges of the village, and the stars wheel slowly overhead. Life here does not pause for comfort. It only pauses for death. Morning comes not as a gentle light, but as a pale, reluctant glow forcing its way over the horizon. Your body aches as if the night had been spent working, not sleeping. The cold has crept into your bones, and it feels as though your marrow itself is frozen. You roll from the pallet, landing on the hard floor with a muted thud. Your breath puffs in the air, like smoke from a dying fire. Today is not a feast day. That means there is no respite, no excuse to linger indoors. The fields, the forest, the beasts, what few of them you have, must be tended. Even in winter, the work claws at you. The frost doesn't care if you are tired. The earth doesn't care if your back is bent. You step outside into the brittle air. The ground crunches beneath your worn boots. In the distance, you see the other villagers already moving about, each one hunched beneath the same invisible weight. A woman with red hands hangs a shirt stiff with frost on a line, where it will freeze long before it dries. A boy drives the geese toward the stream, though the water will be edged with ice. Beyond the village, the manor stands like a silent judge. Its stone walls are dark with damp, but compared to your timber and thatch, it might as well be a fortress of gold. You know every coin you've earned for years has gone to fill the Lord's coffers, yet the thought barely registers anymore. In this place, fairness is not a concept. Survival is. At the edge of the frozen fields, you join the others hacking at the stiff ground with crude tools. The metal is dull, the handles splintering. Your breath burns in your lungs, but you keep swinging, breaking the soil enough to loosen the weeds that choke what little will grow here come spring. Your hands blister in the cold, but you don't stop. The steward passes on horseback, his cloak billowing. His eyes sweep over you, counting bodies like livestock. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His presence is enough to remind you the land is his, the grain is his, your life is his. By midday, the work stops, not for rest, but for the church bell. The sound carries across the fields, deep and hollow. You trudge toward the chapel, a squat wooden building with a leaning cross at its peak. Inside, it is warmer, but not by much. The priest, a thin man with sunken cheeks, speaks of penance and obedience. His voice is steady, but his eyes keep flicking to the small chest at the foot of the altar. It is tithe a day, and even now, even in winter's lean grasp, you are expected to give. You drop a few shriveled onions into the chest. Others place coins, scraps of cloth, eggs. No one dares withhold. The priest blesses you, though the blessing feels more like a tax receipt than a prayer. When the bell tolls again, you leave the chapel. The sky is darker now, though the day is far from over. The wind has picked up, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere far beyond the village. The talk in the square is hushed, nervous. They say a band of riders has been seen on the road, mercenaries, perhaps, or deserters from some distant war. Either way, men with weapons are rarely good news. That afternoon, you head into the forest again, this time with a small group. The men carry spears, not for hunting, but for defense. The cold has a sharper edge now, and the trees groan in the wind. You search for fallen branches, but you're distracted by the tracks in the snow. Not deer. Not boar. Boot prints. Fresh ones. They lead deeper into the trees, toward the old watchtower no one visits anymore. Someone mutters about thieves. Another says worse, that outlaws have taken shelter there. No one wants to find out. The group turns back, quicker now, eyes flicking over their shoulders. You can feel it too, that sense of being watched. By the time you return to the village, the sky is the color of old iron. The cold has settled in your bones, so deep you doubt even fire could chase it out. You trade part of your gathered wood for a small scrap of salted fish. It smells sharp and metallic, but it will keep you alive. Evening falls, and once again, the Alla house fills. The talk is louder tonight, a nervous energy thrumming under the laughter. Someone swears they saw a torchlight in the trees. Another claims to have heard horses on the road. The old man in the corner says nothing. He just stares into his cup, his face unreadable. When you leave, the cold slaps you like an open hand. The moon is hidden behind clouds, and the village is wrapped in darkness. You hurry home, the fish clutched tight, your ears straining for any sound beyond your own footsteps. Inside, the fire is little more than a few glowing embers. You eat in silence, gnawing the fish until your jaw aches. The taste lingers, salty and bitter. When it's gone, you lie down, pulling the blanket up to your chin. The wind is louder tonight. It rattles the shutters, moans down the chimney. You close your eyes, but sleep does not come easily. Somewhere out there, in the dark beyond the village, are men who do not care who you are. Men who will take what they want, because no one can stop them. You turn over, listening to the creak of the rafters, the hiss of the dying fire. Your mind drifts again to those rumors of cities where the streets are lit at night, where food is sold in markets every day of the year, where walls are high and guards keep watch. But here, there are no walls. Only the cold, the dark, and the knowledge that tomorrow, the work begins again. You turn over, listening to the creak of the rafters, the hiss of the dying fire. Your mind drifts again to those rumors of cities where the streets are lit at night, where food is sold in markets every day of the year, where walls are high and guards keep watch. But here there are no walls. Only the cold, the dark, and the knowledge that tomorrow the work begins again. Somewhere outside, footsteps crunch in the frost. You freeze. They're slow, deliberate, not the frantic scamper of a dog or the drunken sway of a late, returning villager. The steps pause, then resume, this time closer. Your hand instinctively finds the wooden handle of the small knife by your palate. It's no weapon, more suited for gutting fish than defending your life, but it's all you have. The footsteps stop. You hear breathing, faint, ragged, on the other side of the thin wall. A long silence follows. Then, just as suddenly, the sound drifts away, swallowed by the wind. You lie there for what feels like hours, the cold tightening around you like a fist. When sleep finally claims you, it brings no peace. You dream of the road, of endless mud, of shadowy figures on horseback, of hands reaching for you in the dark. You wake with a start, your breath sharp in your chest. The fire is dead. The room is colder than the air outside. The morning comes with a sky the color of ash. You dress quickly, your fingers stiff and numb. Outside, a small crowd has gathered near the well. Their faces are pale, their voices low. You edge closer and see it, a dead sheep, half buried in snow, its belly torn open. The meat is gone, ripped away, not neatly butchered but savaged. Wolves, perhaps, or something worse. The steward arrives on his horse, barking orders. A hunting party is to be formed. No excuses. The Lord will not tolerate threats to his flocks. You are given a spear. Its point dull, the shaft cracked. But you take it anyway. Refusing would mean more than hunger. It would mean suspicion. The party sets off into the forest, the snow crunching under boots. The silence is deep here, broken only by the occasional groan of a tree in the wind. You follow the tracks, dark stains of blood against the white. They lead you deeper, past the frozen stream, past the boundary stones. No one dares cross without reason. The trail ends in a small clearing. There's nothing here but silence and the faint smell of rot. The steward curses and orders the men to fan out. You move cautiously, the cold gnawing at your toes. That's when you see it, a length of cloth, torn and stained, snagged on a low branch. Not animal fur, human fabric. And beneath it, half hidden by snow, the glint of irons, a broken sword. You call out, but the sound seems swallowed by the trees. When the others arrive, they stare at the blade without speaking. No one wants to say what they're thinking. That the stories of riders on the road might be more than stories. That perhaps the thing that tore the sheep apart walks on 2 legs, not 4. The steward takes the sword and says nothing. The hunt ends there. You return to the village with nothing but unease. The day drags on, heavy and slow. You chop wood until your hands are raw. You patch the hole in your roof with straw that will last until the next storm rips it free. You fetch water from the well, breaking the ice with the back of your bucket. By dusk, the unease has turned into something more tangible. Fear. The bell rings again, but not for prayer. This time it's an alarm. People spill from their homes into the square, faces pale in the torchlight. A rider has been spotted on the north road, alone, watching the village from a distance. The steward speaks to the elders, his voice low but urgent. No one goes outside after dark, he says. No fires after nightfall. Keep doors barred, shutters closed. There is no explanation, but no one asks for one. That night, the darkness feels thicker, heavier. Even the moon hides behind clouds. You sit by the dead hearth, listening to the wind claw at the walls. Every creak, every groan, feels like a footstep. You think of the rider, standing on the road, his eyes fixed on the village. You wonder if he is still out there. Sleep is impossible. You find yourself staring at the knife again, turning it in your hands. You remember the stories told by the old man in the owl house, of raiders who came in the night, silent as smoke, leaving nothing but ashes and bones. You used to think they were just stories. Now you aren't so sure. When dawn comes, it is without warmth. The rider is gone, but his absence feels no safer than his presence. The steward says nothing, but his eyes are sharper today, scanning the horizon as if expecting something. The work continues, because it must. The fields don't care about fear. The Lord's taxes don't pause for shadows on the road, and hunger waits for no man. You till, you mend, you carry, all under the grey weight of the sky. In the evening, as you walk back to your hut, you notice something strange. At the edge of the village, near the old watch post, a small bundle has been left in the snow. You approach, cautiously, your breath hanging in the air. It's a sack, coarse, tied with twine. You untie it, half expecting food, or a trap. Inside are 3 things: a loaf of dark bread, a skin of water, and a single silver coin. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. You look around, but the road is empty. Whoever left it is long gone. You take the sack home, your mind spinning. Was it meant for you? For someone else? Is it a gift or a warning? That night you dream again, of the rider, of the broken sword, of the silver coin glinting in the snow. You wake to the wind, to the cold, to the knowledge that tomorrow will be no different. And yet, you cannot shake the feeling that something is coming. The silver coin sits on your table, catching the faint light from the window. You've turned it over in your hands so many times that you know every scratch, every nick, every imperfection on its surface. It is unlike any coin you've seen before. Not the dull, crude currency of the local lord, but finely struck, its edges sharp, its markings strange. The face engraved upon it is not the king's. You don't show it to anyone. In a place like this, a single coin of silver is enough to buy a week's worth of bread, or enough to get you killed for it. Still, you cannot ignore it. The bread is eaten, the water drunk. But the coin remains, cold and heavy in your palm, as though it carries more weight than mere metal. That day, whispers drift through the village like smoke. Someone saw the rider again, at dawn, just beyond the frost-covered hedgerow. This time, there was more than one, shapes in the mist, motionless, watching. The steward orders the outer paths to be patrolled, but there aren't enough men to cover every track, every shadow. Those sent out return pale, faced, swearing they heard footsteps behind them, but saw no one. The air changes. The cold is sharper now, biting through wool and leather. Nights stretch longer, pressing in on the village. Children cry in their sleep. Dogs bark at nothing. You catch yourself glancing toward the road, more often than before, half expecting to see that figure again, half dreading it. 3 days after the coin appeared, the first disappearance happens. A boy, no more than 12, fails to return from gathering firewood. His axe is found lying in the snow, the blade still warm from use. No tracks lead away from it, only the ones he made going in. The search goes through the night. Torches flicker in the dark, their light swallowed by the trees. The only sound is the crunch of boots and the ragged breaths of men who are beginning to understand that they are looking for a body, not a boy. They never find him. The next morning, you notice something strange outside your hut. In the snow, just beyond the door, lies another sack, smaller this time. Inside is a single object, a leather glove, too small for a grown man's hand. You don't tell anyone. By now, you've stopped asking yourself whether the rider and these gifts are connected. You know they are. The question is why, and what's coming next. The steward's orders grow harsher. No one leaves without permission. The gates, if they can be called that, are barred at night. Those who speak of the rider are silenced quickly, with a glare or a heavy hand. The old man in the alehouse says it reminds him of the winter of '63, when the smoke rose from the valley and the screams carried on the wind. He says it like a memory, not a story. Your work continues, but your thoughts are never far from the road. The coin is hidden beneath a loose plank in your floor. The glove, wrapped in cloth, rests beside it. You don't know why you keep them. Perhaps it's because you think they will matter someday, proof of something no one will believe. That night, the dreams return, sharper than before. You walk the forest paths, the snow deep and silent. In the distance, the rider stands, his face hidden beneath a hood. Beside him, the boy from the village, silent, still, his eyes fixed on you. You try to speak, but your voice dies in your throat. The rider turns and begins to walk away, the boy following. You try to run after them, but your feet sink into the snow, each step heavier than the last. You wake in the dark, the wind rattling the shutters. But it's not the wind that woke you. There is a sound, soft, deliberate, like a hand brushing against the wall. You hold your breath. The sound moves, slow, circling. Your knife is in your hand before you realize you've reached for it. The sound stops. And then, a knock. Not a loud one. Just 3 slow, measured taps. You don't move. The knock comes again. When you finally open the door, the snow is untouched. No tracks. No sign of anyone. But there, lying in the center of the threshold, is another coin. Identical to the first. You close the door and bolt it. Sleep doesn't come again. By morning, the news has spread the shepherd is missing. His flock is found huddled together, bleating in panic, but he is gone. His hut is undisturbed, his boots still by the bed. You think of the coins, the glove, the empty snow. You think of the rider watching. And, whatever this is, it is only beginning. The day passes in a haze. Work feels pointless. The sound of the axe on wood, the crunch of your boots in the frost, all of it is muffled. distant, as though you are moving through a dream. You catch yourself scanning the tree line, half expecting to see the shape of a man in the mist, just far enough away that you can never be certain. By evening, a pale sun hangs low, bleeding light into the grey sky. Smoke from the hearths drifts upward, and then flattens. As if pressed down by something unseen, the air feels heavier. At the tavern, the talk is nervous. Men speak in low voices, casting glances at the door. Someone swears they saw hoofprints on the north road, deep, heavy, and leading nowhere. Another says his dog will no longer leave the house. You sip from your cup, but it does nothing to warm you. That night, the dreams are worse. You stand in the middle of the village square. It is empty, silent. The doors of every house ajar. A slow wind carries the smell of smoke and something sweeter, something rotten. You call out, but the only reply is the faint sound of hooves in the distance. You wake with your throat dry, the sound of those hooves still echoing in your mind. 3 more days pass without incident, and the village begins to loosen its shoulders. The steward even allows the children to play outside again, though no one ventures far from the cottages. But that small sense of safety vanishes the moment the bell rings. It's the middle of the afternoon. A peal of iron, deep and urgent. Every head turns toward the sound, the signal for danger. When you reach the square, half the village is already there. The blacksmith's apprentice speaks first, his voice shaking. He found something in the woods. Not a person, not an animal, something else. You follow the group to the tree line. There, lying in the snow, is a cloak, rich fabric, deep green, lined with fur. It is not wet, not frozen, not even dusty. Fresh, as if it had been placed there moments ago, folded neatly like a gift. The steward takes it, but you notice something he doesn't tucked in the folds. Hidden from the others is yet another silver coin. That night, you keep your knife under the blanket. Sleep comes and goes in jagged fragments. Every time your eyes close, you see the rider again. This time he is closer. You can see the stitching of his cloak, the way his breath steams in the cold. And you can see his hand, pale, long-fingered, gloved in leather the color of old blood, resting on the hilt of a sword. When you wake, your window is open. Snow has blown across the floor, and in the center of it, another coin. You do not tell anyone. In the days that follow, you notice changes. The older folk avoid the square. The children no longer laugh when they play. The dogs are restless. At night, strange lights flicker beyond the trees, pale and quick, vanishing when you blink. Then, without warning, the rider appears. Not in a dream, not in rumor. It happens at dusk. You are returning from the well when you hear the sound. Hooves on hard ground, slow, deliberate. Turning, you see him. Cloaked in shadow, mounted on a black horse with eyes like coals. He does not speak. He does not move beyond the steady rise and fall of his breathing. You freeze. For a moment, you think you see movement beneath his hood. A glimmer of metal, the pale curve of a cheek. And then, just as you gather the courage to speak, he turns the horse and rides away. No one else sees him. When you tell the steward, he narrows his eyes. "Best not speak of it again," he says. His voice is calm, but his hand trembles as he pours himself a drink. The next morning, the shepherd's hut is empty. This time there is no search. That night, you lie awake for hours, staring at the shuttered window. The wind howls. Somewhere beyond it, faint but certain, you hear the sound of hooves. And you know, deep in your bones, that the rider is not done. The wind does not stop that night. It claws at the shutters, rattles the door in its frame. The snow falls in heavy, soundless sheets swallowing the world beyond your window. You lie awake, every muscle tight, listening for the sound you now dread and expect in equal measure. When it comes, it is faint, a hollow thud, a rhythm too slow for any working horse. You sit up. The room feels smaller, the air colder. The hooves stop. You creep to the window, easing the shutter open just enough to see. The snow reflects what little moonlight there is, and there, at the edge of the square, the rider waits. He is not alone. Behind him, shapes stand half, hidden in the storm. At first you think they are men, but they are too still. Their proportions slightly wrong. Shoulders too narrow, arms too long. They stand in perfect silence, as if carved from the dark. The rider dismounts. He moves with slow precision, each step deliberate. When he reaches the center of the square, he stops, as if listening. Then he turns his head, not toward the steward's house, not toward the chapel, toward you. It feels as though your chest has been struck. You drop the shutter, stumbling back. The next sound is not hooves, but the bell. It rings once, twice, then falls silent, as if cut short. You grab your knife and rush outside, the snow blinding you, the cold biting deep into your skin. Shapes move in the storm. Neighbors running, calling for their children, doors slamming shut. Then the screaming starts. Through the blur of snow, you see one of the shapes from the tree-line lunge. Its movements are jerky, unnatural, as though some invisible force is pulling it forward. A man goes down, the snow blooming red around him. The rider stands motionless, watching. You try to run to the chapel, but another of the things blocks your path. It tilts its head at you, the way a bird might. In the pale light, you see its face, not flesh, but something stretched and hardened, a mask with empty sockets where eyes should be. Before it can move, the steward appears from the side, swinging an axe. The thing staggers, but there is no blood, no cry of pain. It simply turns away, walking back into the storm. The rider raises a hand. The shapes retreat, melting into the snow, gone as quickly as they appeared. And just like that, it is over. The silence that follows is worse than the attack. The steward is bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his eyes wide with something between fear and recognition. He gathers the survivors into the chapel, bolts the doors. No one speaks. When dawn comes, there are no tracks in the snow. No blood. Not even the bodies of the dead remain. The steward tells you to forget. But you can see in his face that he knows more than he will ever say. That night, the village does not sleep. Every door is barred, every fire kept low. Outside, the snow falls without sound, covering the square, the roofs, the frozen well. But you know, deep down, that snow will not cover this forever. And somewhere in the white silence, the rider waits. The rider tilts his head, the gesture small but heavy with meaning. Then he places the cloth in the snow between you. Without another sound, he turns and walks back the way he came. The shapes melt into the dark, their absence leaving the square, feeling impossibly wide and empty. The bell tolls once more. When you look down, the cloth is gone. Only a shallow imprint remains in the snow, already softening in the falling flakes. In the days that follow, the village grows quieter still. No one speaks of the bell, the rider, or the shapes. But you notice the way people glance over their shoulders more often, how they keep to the center of the square, how the fires in each home are kept burning all night now. And yet, you feel it. Whatever bargain was offered, whatever choice you failed to make, it is not over. The snow may cover the traces, but beneath it, the ground remembers. On the 12th night, the wind changes. It comes from the north now, sharp and thin, carrying with it a smell you cannot name. Not rot, not smoke, but something older, something that stirs a place in your mind you wish had remained untouched. You wake before dawn to find the chapel doors open. Inside, the candles are still burning, but the priest is gone. His boots remain by the altar, dusted with snow. No one saw him leave. That evening, you hear it again, far away at first, then closer, the slow, deliberate rhythm of hooves. You know better than to look out the window. You lie still, counting each step until the sound stops just outside your door. A pause. Then, the faintest scrape, as if something heavy was dragged across the threshold. When you open the door at dawn, the snow is untouched, but the air inside your home is colder than it should be, as the walls themselves had breathed in the night. You know now that this is not a visitor to be met, not an enemy to be fought. This is a presence, ancient, patient, and bound to something you cannot yet see. And as the days shorten, as the nights grow colder and longer, you realize the truth. The rider is not waiting for you to come to him. He is waiting for you to have no choice. The days blur together now. Snow, silence, and the slow heartbeat of winter. You no longer ask when it will end, only when the final step will come. The rider does not appear every night anymore. That would almost be easier. Instead, he comes just often enough that you can never forget him. Always in the corner of your mind, like the memory of a dream that refuses to fade. Sometimes you see him at the far edge of the forest, still as stone. His horse unmoving, his head bowed ever so slightly, as though in prayer. Other times, it's only the shapes, tall and silent, watching from the road, their heads tilted ever so slightly, like they're listening to something you can't hear. The snow hides their steps, the wind swallows their breath, and yet, somehow, you feel them. Your neighbors keep their doors barred after sunset. The tavern no longer spills its drunken songs into the streets. Children no longer play in the square. They sit indoors by the hearth, tracing circles into the frost on the windows, their eyes wide when the wind rattles the shutters. The chapel stands empty now, its candles cold, its doors swinging in the wind. Father Anselm has not been seen in weeks. Some say he left with the merchant caravan before the snows came. Others whisper that he was taken. But no one speaks of it openly. Not here, not anymore. And yet, life continues, stubborn as a weed through stone. Bread is baked, wood is chopped, the well is drawn. You cling to these small rhythms like a rope in the dark. The weight of the bucket in your hands, the smell of fresh bread cooling on the table. These are the only proof that you are still here, that you still exist. But you know, deep down, the rope will not hold forever. One evening, as you sit by the fire, you hear it. Not the hoofbeats this time, but something softer. A knock. 3 times slow, patient, deliberate. You glance at the door, your breath catches. Nobody comes here after dark. For a long moment, you stay seated, your hands curled around the mug in your lap. The steam from the broth rises in thin threads, vanishing into the cold air. The knock does not come again. Finally, you set the mug down. You stand. Each step to the door feels longer than the last. When you open it, the snow is falling heavy and silent. There is no one there. Only a strip of white cloth lying in the snow, bound with a single thread of red. You do not touch it. You simply stand in the doorway, feeling the cold seep into your bones, listening to the silence grow thicker, heavier, until it feels like the world itself is holding its breath. The fire behind you pops and hisses. The scent of smoke clings to your clothes. You step back inside and close the door, sliding the bolt into place. But even with the lock, you do not feel safe. That night, you dream of the rider. Not standing on the edge of the forest this time, but in the center of your village, where the snow lies unbroken. His horse breathes clouds into the still air. He says nothing, but you feel the weight of his gaze on you. When you wake, your breath is shallow. The room is cold. The coals in the hearth are dead. You rise and look out the window. The snow in the street is marked by only one trail, hoofprints. They lead up to your door, and then they stop. Days pass. The sky remains heavy and grey, the snow relentless. Food grows scarce. The old woman in the house nearest the well is found frozen in her chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as though she had been waiting for someone. The men of the village speak in low voices about forming a watch. They do not. The nights are too cold. The fear is too deep. One afternoon, you walk to the edge of the forest to gather firewood. The air smells of pine and iron. In the distance, you see movement, a dark shape between the trees. The rider. You freeze. He is far away, but you feel as though he is close enough to hear your breath. The horse shifts its weight. The rider tilts his head the same way he always does. And then, nothing. He does not move closer. He does not ride away. You leave the wood where it lies and return home. That night, the knocking returns. This time, it is not 3 slow knocks, but 5. Quick. Urgent. When you open the door, the snow is untouched. No footprints. No cloth. Nothing. But as you close the door, you hear it. A voice, so faint it could be the wind. A single word, spoken low soon. You do not sleep. The days grow shorter. The cold grows deeper. The rope you've been clinging to feels thinner now, frayed at the edges. One morning, you wake to find the well frozen solid. That same day, the mill collapses under the weight of the snow. The village feels smaller now, as though the world outside has pulled away from it. And always, you feel the rider, just beyond sight. It is on the coldest night yet that you finally see him up close. You are woken by the sound of hooves on snow, slow and deliberate, circling your home. You do not move. You barely breathe. And then, silence. You think he has gone, but when you glance toward the window, you see him. Right there. His figure framed by the frost. The horse stands still. The rider's face is hidden in shadow, but you feel the weight of his gaze like iron. You cannot move. You cannot speak. And then, as slowly as he came, he turns the horse and rides into the dark. When dawn comes, the snow outside your door is marked again. Hoofprints. But this time, they lead away. Far, far into the white distance. You stand in the doorway for a long time, watching the tracks disappear. Somewhere beyond the snow, beyond the dark, beyond the edge of everything you know. The rider waits. But waiting is not idleness. Waiting is a kind of hunting. In the weeks that follow, you begin to understand this. It's in the way the forest seems quieter each morning, the way the crows gather on the rooftops and simply watch. It's in the way the air carries a heaviness now, as though it is aware of something approaching, and chooses to stand still in dread. The villagers stop speaking of the rider entirely. It is as if silence itself has become a shield. To name him would be to invite him in. One evening, while gathering kindling near the edge of the square, you notice a small object half buried in the snow. You dig it free with trembling fingers. A child's carved wooden horse. Its paint is flaked away, the wood worn smooth by years of touch. But the oddest thing is that the snow beneath it is warm, as though it had been lying on sunlit stone instead of frozen ground. You slip it into your pocket without thinking, though you cannot say why. That night, you dream of hooves again. Not on snow, but on something harder, stone, perhaps, or frozen earth. The sound echoes in a way it never has before, as though in a corridor or a hall. You smell wood smoke and something else beneath it, something metallic. You wake with the taste of blood in your mouth. The next morning, the wind shifts. It carries with it a sound from the forest, faint but unmistakable. A horn. It is not the deep, sonorous call of a hunting horn. This sound is sharper, colder. It cuts through the air like a knife, and once you hear it, you realize you have heard it before, though you cannot remember when. The old men in the village go pale when the sound reaches their ears. One of them mutters something about the last winter. No one asks what that means. By the third day of hearing the horn, people have begun to vanish. First a woodcutter who lived alone in the northernmost house, then the miller's apprentice. No struggle, no signs of violence. Just empty rooms, cold hearths, doors left ajar. You think of leaving. But the roads are buried, the forest too deep, and even if you could, there's the matter of the rider. You sense that he would not allow it. On the fourth night, you see the glow. Not firelight, not exactly. It is pale, cold, and it comes from the forest. It flickers in a slow, steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of something vast. You stand at your window for what feels like hours, watching that glow pulse against the black trees. And then, without realizing you've moved, you are outside, your boots crunching in the snow, your breath hanging in the air. The glow draws you like a moth to a candle. The village disappears behind you. The trees close in. The snow muffles everything except the sound of your own breath. And then you see him. The rider, closer than ever before. The glow comes from the ground around his horse's hooves. From the snow itself, which seems to shimmer and shift as though it is not snow at all. The horse's eyes are black and bottomless. The rider's face is still hidden beneath the shadow of his helm. But now you see the faintest glint, not of metal, but of something wet. In his hand, he holds the wooden horse. Your legs lock. Your breath catches in your throat. When he speaks, his voice is low and smooth, as though it has traveled a great distance to reach you. You have carried it far, he says. You do not answer. It belongs to the road, he continues. And the road is not yet done with you. You feel the weight of the object in your pocket. The carved horse is warm now, too warm. Your fingers twitch toward it, but you cannot bring yourself to take it out. The rider tilts his head, as if studying you. Soon, he says again, and then the glow fades. The rider dissolves into the dark, as if he had never been there at all. You return to the village in a daze. You do not tell anyone what you have seen. What would you even say? The horn stops after that night. But the silence it leaves behind feels heavier than the sound itself ever did. In the days that follow, the snow begins to thaw. Not by much, just enough for the roads to show their frozen, muddy bones beneath the white. People step outside more often. There is talk of a spring market, of repairing the mill. But you know better. On the morning the first crow returns to the bell tower, you find something on your doorstep. It is the wooden horse. The red thread is wrapped around its neck now, tied in a perfect knot. There is no note. You set it on the table. You tell yourself you will throw it into the fire. But you never do. That night, you dream again. This time, you are on the road yourself, snow beneath your boots, trees looming on either side. Somewhere ahead, you hear the slow, steady sound of hooves. You follow, though your legs ache and your breath burns. You never see him, but you know, the rider is leading you somewhere. When you wake, your boots are wet. The thaw continues. The villagers begin to laugh again, though it is a brittle sound. The market stalls open. Bread is baked. The sound of hammers on wood rings in the square. And yet, at the edge of it all, the forest waits. You never go back to the place where you saw the glow. You never step beyond the last fence, but every so often you hear it, the distant, patient sound of hooves. Not every night, just enough to remind you the rider is still out there, and he is still waiting. Not for the snow to fall again, not for the frost to return. He is waiting for you, and you know, when he comes, you will follow.